Good stuff, right? How many of you getting a little bit more than you thought you would get this weekend? Y'all, how many have been to other financial seminars? Let me see your hands. How many of them given you actual, real-world, practical steps that you can take when you get home tonight to start to change your life? Most of them are designed to sell you into another level of training, another level of education in order to get more money. And believe me, that is an education of itself. You definitely got to get an education, but you want to get the right education. I'm so excited that you got here. I'm so excited to hear the comments and the questions that come up during the break and to see the light bulbs that are coming on. It is thrilling. It is thrilling, and I can tell you're starting to get a little bit full. We've been sitting here for almost 2 full days, and it's starting to hit that point where it's starting to spill out, and people are going, what did he say about this? How many of you feel that way? It's kind of like drinking from a fire hydrant, isn't it? You turn the valve on and just go ahead and stick your face in there. It's all right. Lots of stuff. Lots of good practical steps that you can take home to change your finances. You see how easy it can be? Wealth comes little by little, right? So we start putting it in a little bit at a time, and pretty soon it starts growing. Years ago, we watched some very good friend of ours who were bringing up their kids. And as their kids started to leave home, they didn't have a clue at all about handle their finances. So now they've got adult children, and they're helping them pay cars. And pretty soon I find out the adult children are living in an apartment, and they're paying their rent. So they're paying for their house, their car, they're paying for their adult children's car and rent, still providing for their needs, only they're now providing for them to have adult lifestyles. When does it stop? Those poor kids were not equipped at all to go out into the world and live according to today's economic-driven society. How many of you have seen stories like that? You know, friends, families, maybe even kids from your own home. A lot of that's because we just don't know. We're not taught how to balance a checkbook in schools anymore, are we? We're not. We're not taught how to make simple investments. We're not taught that buying a stock means loaning your money to a company. Just that one simple little shift in your mindset makes you question completely whether you want to invest in that stock or not, doesn't it? If our kids have even half of this training, how much will their lives be empowered to change? I've got 3 daughters. Now, it's a little bit tough sometimes to be the only man in a house full of girls. I used to always say there's a no drama zone, a drama-free zone. Anywhere within 50 feet of where I stand is drama-free. How do you think that was received? Constant. My girls are all growing now. I've only got one more at home. And she's graduating high school next week and then off to college. And then we got this big empty house with no more kids. And I'm starting to realize how vitally important it is to downsize. And I realize that as a parent, if you do a good job, your kids reward you by breaking your heart and leaving you. But if you do a bad job, they stick around and bleed you dry. So it's a no-win scenario. The idea is to do a good job, to give them a start, a successful start in life. So we want to teach our kids a little bit about how to manage their money. Yes. How many of you want to know how to teach your kids? Yes. How many of you want to know how to teach your grandkids? Yes. How many of you want to know how to tell your neighbor how to take care of their kids? Yes. Now that door might not be open, so be careful there. We want to prepare the next generation. We have a responsibility to prepare the next generation. The more equipped they are, the more successful they'll be. Let me tell you about the importance of doing this right now in these times. We know that we are headed for an imminent economic reset that is of global proportions. Now, I don't care how well off you are. Look, economies are going to continue to spin. Nations rise, nations fall, and people still find things that they value, and economies still continue to go. In the worst of times, people will still make millions of dollars when they're positioned properly. But those are the people who understand the strategies that we've been sharing with you this weekend. Those are the people who learn how to employ their soldiers and tell them where to go and what lands to conquer when they got there. Do you want your kids to know how to do that in this time? Because if it doesn't fall today, and it takes 5 years for it to happen, it's going to happen. And when it happens, do we want to just leave our kids wondering how they're going to survive? I believe we could be looking at anarchy in our streets in many major cities because there's so much entitlement that's out there.
Yeah.
When we saw Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans, we begot a warning blip of what could happen. If we hit an economic reset in our nation and suddenly there's no welfare for the entitled people, now we've got revolts and riots in the street that make Baltimore look like a New Year's Eve bash. If we equip the next generation, it's our responsibility to not just employ these things ourselves, but to teach our kids. And to teach them to be as successful as they possibly can. You want the kids to grow up and be happy and healthy in whatever they do and chase after, right? And we want them to succeed so we can be proud of them. My now 19-year-old daughter always said when she grows up and gets 18, she's going to leave the house. And she fulfilled her promise to me. And at 18, she moved out. She went and got a job. She decided, Dad, I don't want to go to school. You didn't go to school. I hate school. She hated school so much that she actually accelerated her classes in her junior year and graduated a year early. Because she says, Dad, I want to do better than you. So I'm not going to quit school. I'm just going to get it over with. And then decided, I'm going to go work. You don't need school to be successful in today's society. You need persistence, diligence. You need stick-to-itiveness. So here my 18-year-old daughter decides I'm going to move out. She went looking for apartments. She established credit because you have to have a credit score. So she established credit. She's now 19, she has 2 credit cards, and she hates using them. I watched this young lady at 18 go take her credit card to the gas pump, swipe it to fill up her car, drive back to the house and log online and be upset that she couldn't pay the balance off already. Because the charge hadn't even posted to her account. So she managed her score good enough and started saving money. She turned 18 in April. And in August, she had enough money to move out and get her own apartment, take care of everything. She hasn't missed a beat since. She pays her rent, she manages her finances. She teaches her friends how to manage their finances. When her friends have questions, they come to her and say, how do you do this? And now she's got this opportunity that she's moving to Georgia. She told me the other day how much money she's got saved in order to make this move. Job lined up because she knows how to handle her finances. And now she's 19, striking out in her life. It breaks my heart to see her go, but I can't tell you how proud I am of this young lady. Phenomenal job. Is that normal or abnormal?
It's abnormal.
It's very much abnormal. I had a friend of mine once said that we didn't raise kids, we raised aliens. So this little alien is taking the world by storm. When she was 5 years old, she told her mother that she would like to grow up and have a restaurant where she could sell baked goods, and she loves cooking. So now she's had this opportunity open up for her to go to this little town in Georgia and work with a lady who owns a restaurant where she has the opportunity to learn how to run this restaurant and get the experience that she needs in order to one day have her own. And money is not an object to her because she understands if she gets something in her heart and she starts moving toward it, then the opportunities will come. So here she's had this dream to go to work in a restaurant, and the girl works at a dry cleaner's, making $9 an hour. And she saved all this money, by the way. Oh, and she bought a car and has a car payment in the middle of this too. Pays rent, has a car payment, 0 balance on credit card. She saved enough money to relocate herself to Georgia because she knows how to handle her finances. So she makes the commitment to start going. You don't have a job, I said, baby. You need a job. It'll happen, Dad. You moved to Orlando without a job. Yeah. Remember some of those struggles? But she started moving, and moving with the right heart. And the opportunities opened up to make the way for her to fulfill her dreams. Because she's equipped to be able to go out there. You want kids to be equipped like that? Do we need them to be equipped like that?
Yes, we do.
So we can give them some very basic principles. The Bible says that a good man leaves an inheritance for his children's children. Now, I always tell my kids, I quote this scripture, and I says, remember, the word says that you leave an inheritance for your children's children. So I said, girls, that means your kids are going to get rich, but you get nothing. But I can at least give them the tools. If they go to school and they have to borrow student loans, and then they graduate a 4-year college, because now I'm going to have 2 daughters that are, one's halfway through school, the other one's starting. And if I allowed them to graduate with all of that student debt, what am I doing to help them get ahead? Now, that does not mean that it's the parent's responsibility to go pay for the cost of education. And to have them also willing to contribute toward their tuition and expenses if they need to. Now, my oldest daughter spent 2 years in the dorm. Now she's got an apartment. She's got a roommate. She's managing her expenses. And plans to move through school. That is a big inheritance that you can give to kids right there. So they're not in bondage. Now they're moving free. Does this sound exciting? Does it sound like something that a lot of us wished we had when we started off? So how do we help our kids plan for their future? First thing we got to do is we got to teach them to dream, right? Kids have no problems dreaming. So you just got to encourage their dreams. You got to help them find out what they're good at and what they're passionate about, and then encourage them to follow that passion. Generations ago, people chose a vocation based on their passion. Today, we choose a vocation based on its salary. Which master are we serving? It never used to matter how much money we made in our job. If you love what you do, then it's not work. When Keith was talking yesterday and he showed you the pyramids, and you had 98% of the people that start with a job and then maybe add investments, and the whole thing's catawampus that'll fall over, and he shows how the 2% do it. They might have started with a job, but they invested excess income, they lived meekly, saved little by little, put some funds in their silo, and then started buying passive income streams. I know very many wealthy people today who still get up and go to work every day. The difference between them and you is they don't have to go to work. They want to go to work. And when you love what you do, it's not work. You'll want to get up and go because you know you can make a contribution. You know you're serving your community. If you help your kids to see the vision and the passion that's in their heart, and you empower them to chase after it, then they're going to love whatever they do regardless of what their bank account says. We've got to empower them to be free with their dreams. If our kids are going into any kind of a relationship, do you think as they enter that relationship, they should be financially equipped to manage that relationship? And if you're growing a son or a daughter, and they go meet somebody else, what are the chances that that person has had any kind of financial training in today's marketplace? None. They know how to log into their bank account so they can see how much money just before they go out to the mall. And then they wonder, like I had to hear on the phone the other day, a young lady telling me that she didn't realize that Netflix was going to charge her account and then also hit that $35 overdraft fee. Ouch. Online banking. Terrible. We've got to learn to be in front of that, right? That's part of being accountable for everything. You can teach your kids to start petition out money, to start to assign it to tasks. You remember the 70-10-10 plan that we introduced last night? For those of you who weren't here, we broke it up. I told you I don't believe in a budget. I believe in a guideline. A budget is a series of rules and regulations that puts more control of your life. It doesn't give you I'm not giving you freedom to go spend more than you earn. Quite the contrary. I encourage you to be meek with your money. And you find a way to take your living expenses to fit within 70% of your income. Then you give 10%, you pay yourself 10%, and you spend the other 10% to both entertain yourself and sharpen your axe. Invest in yourself so that you can become better, faster, stronger you. Employ this to your kids. How many of you have given kids an allowance? Do you give it to them regardless of what they do? You're entitled to your 25 bucks a week or whatever amount that is. It makes me sick to see kids walk up to mom and dad and say, I want to go to the movies this week. And they peel off and hand them 50 bucks and say, have a good time on Friday. And that was right after the field trip and the new clothes. And how much do we give to our kids without even thinking about it? Now, I've watched this progress through the generations. You had the generations in the Great Depression that learned to save everything. My wife will tell a story of going to visit her grandmother and finding rolls of the cardboard tubes that toilet paper comes on, stuffed in bags down there. Because everything had a use and everything had value, and things were so scarce during that time that they would save everything. And in that frugality that they learned, because of the hard economic times, they didn't buy their kids much. They taught them practicality and to go with needs. So their kids grow up, and the economy's coming, and they're starting to be introduced to credit and free spending. And they resent mom and dad because they didn't give them things, and they say, I'm not going to do that to my kids. So they start spending and giving their kids more, and pretty soon that generation grows up feeling like they deserve it. And then it goes, that generation then starts having kids, and now we're into the fourth generation. Mom and dad felt they did better. They don't want to deny their kids anything. So now how many kids are driving brand new cars to high school?
It's true. Very true.
They don't know how to make the payments, but mom and dad are making the payments. Are they doing that child any justice at all? Are they even giving them a fair chance of success in the world? None at all. They haven't learned how to petition out their own funds, so they can't teach kids. So help your kids manage money. The first thing you're going to do is set an example. You've got to be the example. When you can manage your own finances, and that means you don't get mad whenever something gets spent that it shouldn't be spent and start to belittle or badger them, because then they start to resent it. You've got to have a reward basis system, and you teach them how to start managing their finances. I established a payroll system for my kids. We talked a little bit earlier with the question Maurice brought up about corporate structures. Since nobody will hire me out of pure desperation, I started a business, and I've managed to create a few things that I can get paid to do. And that grew out to be a couple of different corporates. So I was able to set up a structure where I actually set up an LLC entity that became a consulting firm to my parent corporation, and it paid my kids. Now, there's certain IRS rules that you have to follow on this, and you've got to make sure your kids are actually doing something, and you've got to be able to log and document it. And we were able to fulfill those criteria through this structure, and we put our kids on a payroll. Now, whether you do it through a corporate entity like that or not, you can still implement a payroll system. Now, my kids were required to do some things. They had their regular chores to do. I also gave them extra tasks. They had to read and write book reports. And I got to choose the books they read. And I gave them some real good books. Some good old classics, as well as some that were new. And I don't want to get into the books. Some of them were teen success. Some of them were money management books. My favorite kind of books are all about God and money. Who would guess, right? So most of the books that I've read and really enjoyed, I gave to my kids. And they got to where, Dad, another book. But they learned real quick. If there wasn't a report on my desk by 5 o'clock on Friday, they didn't get paid that week. And I know a lot of times they would sit down at 4:45 and blast through the chapter real quick and copy a paragraph and write it as a report. It was a halfway job. I still went ahead and honored it because at least they were doing something. With the hopes of the seed that was getting planted in them would bear fruit one day. And at least they were doing it. Now, I started each one of my kids on this program when they were 14. So when they were 14 years old, we started paying them, and the amount we finally settled on, and we did a lot of things wrong and right, and we kind of finally settled into a place where each of my daughters got $200 a month. That's $50 a week, and we paid them on the 1st and the 15th. So they got regular paydays, just like you would get when you go out and get a regular job. And then we made them responsible for certain expenses. You're 14. You want a cell phone? We'll do our part. We went and bought them the first cell phone on one of those no contract plans that they had to pay every month, and we would help them shop for and pick out the plan. They would find plans like with Virgin Mobile for $35 a month at that time that gave them everything they needed so they could still text and talk and have data and do what kids want to do with phones. And then if they paid the bill, great. If they didn't, great. Didn't bother me. We only bought them the one phone though, and if they didn't take care of it and it broke, they had to figure it out from there. We also made them responsible to buy their own school supplies. Does anybody buy the stuff you need to take to work with you? Who does? You do. Their job is to go to school. If they're earning a paycheck, shouldn't they have to buy the tools that they need to go do their job? We also says, out of this $200, you now have to buy your own clothes. Name brands went right out the window. Clearance racks became their favorite. They learned to get the best deal. If they wanted to go to movies with their friends, they had to save their money. We required them to give to charity because charity is the most important thing. Now, it was really, really cool to eavesdrop on a conversation my girls had when they were like between 15 and 17, maybe the oldest was around 18, right in that range. And we heard them having a conversation. And one of them says to the other, "You must be paying your tithes." "Yeah, I am. I figured that because you're getting all these babysitting jobs." They equated giving with creating opportunity to receive. Now, we tried teaching them to save. You're going to open up a savings account, and you're going to transfer 10%. And they did what my wife and I did in our early days of managing the savings account. They put it in. Look, Dad, it's there. They take it out. They'd put it in. Look, Dad. They'd take it out. But then they would come along a time where they had a need. "Oh, you don't have any savings, do you, baby? I guess you're going to have to wait till payday." "Oh, but Dad," it's what I would have to do. "My friends are all going to the movie this week for this new premiere and I don't have any money." Guess you can't go. I actually had one of my daughter's parents come to me and said, "Are you really that cheap?" And then I sat down and I started talking. I was like, "What do you mean?" He says, "Well, your daughter never has money to go to the movie." And I said, "You know how that works?" And I explained it to him. You know what he did? He went home and put his daughter on payroll. Now, there was some hard things we had to do with this too. One of my daughters saved a bunch of money to find a cell phone. You guys got to know, girls love their cell phones, right, ladies? Yes. Especially teenage girls. Man, I can look now and they can text up a storm. It's amazing. I mean, their thumbs fly so fast. I'm like, how do you do that? You're going to hurt yourself. Be careful. And she saved up to buy this phone. And she loved this phone. And she had it for about 2 days. We went on a camping trip. And we went to the dock to go fishing because she loved to go fishing with me. And she took her phone and I says, "Baby, I don't think you should take your phone." "It'll be okay, Dad." She's sitting there texting, sits on her lap, stands up to grab the pole. The phone went into the lake. That was it. I think it was harder on me to watch her heartbreak and know that I had the power in my wallet to go fix it and not do it because she had to learn to take care of it. Her younger sister saved and bought an iPod to play her music on. Loved that thing. Left it in her pants pocket one day, threw it through the wash. She was heartbroken. How do you learn how to value things? When you break something that you bought yourself, you suddenly learn to take care of it. As a parent, it was very, very hard to watch them do that, know I had the power to fix it, and to have to be meek with that power and hold back. But they're so much better for it. Those are things I wish my parents would have done for me. It would have kept me out of bankruptcy. I might have still lived in the tent because that was really more of an adventure than a hardship. But you teach your kids how to manage the money. You teach your kids how to be responsible and start covering expenses. And then when you're 18, They're equipped to go out and do it on their own, so they reward you, break your heart, and leave you. But nothing could make me prouder than watching my baby girls go out and be successful and know they can manage their money. That doesn't mean they make all the right decisions, but it means I don't have to worry about them landing somewhere and being homeless. It also means that I feel a little bit better about downsizing my current home because there's less chance of them actually coming back home. So there are positives. That doesn't mean the door's not open, of course. What can you do to help your kids start to understand this? We talked about some of the expenses you would give. We actually helped them to pick out charities. When my youngest daughter was born, she had a condition called congenital lobar emphysema. And her right lung was trapping air. So when she was 3 weeks old, it was removed. She got a couple of helicopter rides to Loma Linda University Medical Center in California. I'm 50 years old. I've never been in a helicopter. She's flown in one twice. I've got an X-ray picture that we still keep because you keep things that remind you of struggles you've went through and victories that have been handed to you. And in this X-ray, her heart is way down over here because her lung had blown up so much that it compressed her vital organs down over here. And it got to a place where the doctors are telling us, if you don't let us do this, she's not going to be here. So she's born with this congenital lobar emphysema. And when we go down to visit her at the hospital, we don't have a lot of money. My in-laws put us in a hotel for 1 week, but after that, Ronald McDonald House, here we come. And they let us come in, and what a phenomenal establishment. My girls remember that as a good time. They got balloons, they got to play with other kids. So when they grew up, one of the charities they chose to start supporting was Ronald McDonald House. Did that benefit people? Yes. Absolutely, it did. Because we taught them, I don't care if you give your tithe to church, I don't care if you give it to charity, the important thing is that you give, and you give to something that supports people. And so one of them picked Ronald McDonald House, and she still has it on her list today. Can you help them pick out a charity? They don't have to give to the one that you support. Find the one that they can identify with in their heart, and then encourage them to give as their heart directs them. You make it a love offering instead of a required law. And then they can find joy in it and start giving. Savings accounts are very important for them to establish because they start to learn when life's catastrophes happen, you have to have something to fall back on. Now, out of my 3 girls, one of them was a very great saver. I said was because it's not always constant. It's not always constant in our lives. But she always knew that if something came up in life, she had a little bit of money in savings to cover it. Now she's like, Dad, I'm in high school. It's my last time. Just let me enjoy it. Now our payroll it always had an end date. It goes up until they're 18. I get to write my last payroll check to my last baby girl in 2 weeks. And every one of them's on their own. My oldest said she made more money without me paying her than she did with me paying her. She didn't go get a job. She started farming her services out and babysitting and doing odd jobs. She was my little entrepreneur. She started creating things. This is the one who, when she was 11 years old, got a bunch of Christmas money and birthday money and saved it up and says, Mom, Dad, I want a cell phone. I looked at my wife and says, uh-oh, it starts. So we walked into Target to pick out a cell phone, and she's looking at what she can afford. Oh, I'll take this one. I like it. I can afford it. And we start reading the fine print. Yeah, you get 30 days. You get so many minutes that last 30 days, and then there's a charge of so much per day just for having the service. I'm like, you're never going to get to talk on this thing. You're just going to pay to be able to turn it on every day. She said, this is not a good deal. Broke her heart when we left there with no cell phone, and she still got her $100 in her pocket. And we brought her home, we got online, and we started shopping for the best plan that we could get. One that got rid of all the junk fees and still gave her what she wanted on a no-contract plan. And this plan was a bonus. She got the first 60 days instead of just 30. So she's living large, she's got a cell phone, she's 11 years old, she's talking to people, she's having a good time, she's texting, and I don't know how many kids had a cell phone. There weren't that many, but she was happy because she had one. Well, the end of the 60 days is coming up. And she comes to me and says, Dad, I need $30. Can you imagine how I would have reacted? So what do you need $30 for, baby? She goes, my cell phone's coming due. I need to buy more minutes. I said, I guess you better get busy then. You need to earn the money. She says, that's impossible. I said, well, if that's what you want to believe, that's true. And we had about a 30-minute conversation, and she doesn't remember this, but I do. It's one of my fond memories. At the end of this 30 minutes, where I was telling my daughter that if she needed it, she could go find a way to get it, she gave me a hug and a little kiss on the cheek, and my 11-year-old daughter whispers in my ear and says, Daddy, I hate it when you're right. She went out and earned the money to buy her cell phone minutes the next month. And it was at that age that she realized there was no obstacle in life she couldn't overcome. 2 or 3 weeks later, this same little girl comes to me and goes, Dad, I've got something I need to talk to you about, and you have to listen to everything I've got to say. You can't say no. I said, uh-oh. She's got behind her back a notebook, and she pulls it out, and this is green spiral-bound notebook. I'll never forget this. And she goes, I want a ferret, but you can't say anything. And I'm sitting there going, they stink, they're noisy, I'm not cleaning up after it, I don't want a ferret. And she turns the page and opens it and shows me how she's calculated how much this ferret's going to cost. The cage will be this much. I need this for the food, the shavings. Oh, and the ferret actually costs this. And everything adds up to about $500. I'm like, this little girl just raised $30. It took her almost a month. $500 is never going to happen. I'm saved. She turns the page. 11 years old, has a whole list, a business plan of things that she can do and how much she gets paid on each item that add up to $500 so that she can go get her ferret. There were no limits. Now, fortunately for me, she was still fickle in her thought process and changed her mind frequently. And I don't mean to insinuate that's just because she was a girl. It's because she was my daughter. So she got about half the money and decided she wants something else, and we never had to worry about the ferret. But it created a little monster who began to realize that nothing in life was impossible. I remember driving down the road one day when I needed money. And I heard God speak. And you know, sometimes when you're not even talking to God and He suddenly speaks, you know He's got something real important to say, right? So here I'm driving down the road, and I hear God say, "You need money?" Man, bang, set the brake. Yes. I'm ready for it to just fall from heaven. And He says, go get it. Now, how does that help me? I need money. He says, go get it. He began to talk to me about Peter. Peter's walking with Jesus up to the temple. And Jesus just walks right into the temple. Peter, in his ignorance, stops and talks to the guy at the gate who's collecting the temple tax and goes, well, yeah, of course I'll pay. His mouth just wrote a check that he couldn't cash because he had no money in his wallet, right? And then Peter, who's got all the faith in the world in Jesus, did just what my little girl did to me. She come to me and says, Daddy, I need $30, and she got the talk. And then she went out and earned it. Peter goes, Jesus, I need some money to pay this temple tax. And Jesus is like, what'd you promise that for? Now you're going to have to go get it. And what did He tell Peter to do? We want to focus on the fact that Peter went and caught a fish that had 2 gold coins in its mouth and was able to pay the tax. We want to look at the miracle and go, God, where's my miracle? We completely miss the fact that Peter had to go work to get it. And what was Peter by trade? He was a fisherman. If you need money, you need to go get it. You need to look at what you do and go get it. My 11-year-old girl got this, and God wants you to get up and go get it. If an 11-year-old little girl gets that, why don't we? We've got to teach them that there really is no limits. And if they understand that they control their finances, nothing else is an obstacle. So you teach them to start petitioning it off, just in the same way that I've shared with you. Here's your expenses. Here's what you give to charity. And with my girls, it's like, if you're not going to invest in yourself, then at least you're going to read the books that I give you. And I would always give them the option, if you don't want to read the book I get, go pick out one of your own. Submit it to me, and if it's approved, you can buy it and you can read it. I think the flaw in that plan was I was going to let them buy it. They figured as long as I was paying for it, they'd read whatever I gave it to them. I got the idea to pay my kids to read those books from John Maxwell. Great leader, a man who mixed business with ministry and has had great impact on corporate America teaching leadership skills. And he did that to his kids, would pay them to read a book. And I thought, well, that's a phenomenal idea. Now, my kids weren't always receptive to the payroll idea. In fact, at one time I had a small revolt. They went on strike. As the employer, AKA the daddy man, I got upset. How dare you strike on me? Fine, I'll just won't pay any of you. You're all fired. And I agreed to take them off payroll. It was good. Within 24 hours, one by one, they all came to me. Dad, we're sorry. We like payroll. Can you put us back on payroll again? I never had a strike again. If we taught our kids how to invest, if we taught them how to start employing their dollar bills and sending them out to conquer commands, how successful in life could they be? We want them to be successful, and yet we don't equip them with this. We've got to give our kids the opportunity to pursue all their dreams, especially in the trying economic times that we're about to go into. Especially. They deserve it, don't they? Henry Ford said that if we could teach our kids to invest, we could give them the world. I'm paraphrasing, of course. We want so bad to invest that we forget to teach our kids these principles, right? But this is important. Some of you might have grown kids. You know what? They probably still ask you for advice once in a while. What's the best advice you can give them? It's to be an example of practicing these principles in your life, starting when? Right now. And pretty soon they're going to go, Mom, Dad, what happened? Suddenly you got money in the bank. You just told me that you had a flat tire on the truck the other day and you had bought a whole new set of tires because one went flat. How are you able to do that? Now suddenly the door's open for you to introduce to them a new philosophy about their money. Adult kids we really can't teach. But can we be that example? And that example gives the greatest impact that you could ever have on them, right? Have you ever thought that your kid might want to start a business? I know a couple of you have already mentioned to me how your kids are interested in little entrepreneurial activities. I see kids all the time that buy and sell stuff at school. They're doing little things to make money. When my oldest daughter went off payroll and she started doing her own little entrepreneurial activities, she told me she made more working for herself than she ever did working for me. Of course, now she's working 2 jobs and starting to get introduced to the reality of life. Working around her school schedule and really making a lot of sacrifices to make things happen. But all understanding the reality that she has to do that instead of just folding away and going, the pressure's too big. Because she understands the skills to make her money. If kids start learning at a very young age to start sowing some seed in the silo, how much more will they have to start investing? I see some younger people in here. You've got such an advantage over me because you can start with this right now. And the younger you start, the more that it multiplies. So we teach our kids to start doing this right now. Can we teach our kids how to start an IRA, a retirement account? How to invest in stocks? My 3 girls right now own stock in Ford Motor Company, a little company called Sierra Wireless, and Activision, which is, of course, the gaming console. Ford's not doing so well, but it's along steady. The other two are doing great and paying them dividends. An 18, 19-year-old, 20-year-old who own a little bit of stock. How many kids do that? Of course, I wish they had more, but they've got other priorities with their money. But the seed is planted for them to start going. How far ahead are they? How far ahead are you right now because you have this information? Can that change everything? The greatest gift we can give them is to be that example. Adult children, start being the example. Young kids, be the example. When my oldest daughter was in her senior year in high school, all her friends started coming and asking her for advice. And she came and told us how they would say, we wished our parents had done something. They were scared to launch out because they didn't have a clue how to handle their finances, and they're watching our daughters manage bank accounts. And they would share that they were afraid to go out because they didn't know how to handle their money. Now, your kids aren't always going to go off and do everything that you want them to do, but their free will is given to them by God, not you. So you can't make decisions for them, but you can at least equip them to manage the finances to make it less hard on them when they get out there, right? Good stuff, right? You can do so much to equip and empower your kids. So much. Does that give you some ideas?